All right, welcome back to Rodent Sports. Yes, we are now at the Final Four. And my goodness, what a Final Four we've got. I'm going to start with the game that's not going to get a lot of attention, or not nearly as much attention as the later game, and that is the early semifinal between Villanova and Kansas. Villanova has played really well in this tournament. They did struggle in the regional final with Houston, helped by the fact that Houston could not make a three-pointer to save their life.
Pick up threes all night. They go in, we win. We miss, they lose. Give me a break, you dumbass.
In the second half, scoring 47 points and just destroyed Miami there.
No! I'll crush you with my bare hands!
This is going to be a game that comes down to pace. Villanova is one of the slowest playing teams in the country. They win because they're very offensively efficient and precise, playing that tempo, and that is how they get the job done in games like that. Kansas, scored 83 in round one, 79 in round two, and after only getting 66 against Providence, 76 in the regional final against Miami. So they want that game to be in the 70s and 80s. They prefer a faster pace. They're going to try to do that. This is a weird situation. Villanova, under Jay Wright, when they've gotten this far, they've won, and they've won consistently. Kansas has been a team, and this year's edition is no different. The last few years, it's been a team that's been, the whole has been more than the sum of its parts. And they've been a great regular season team because they've been a really good team, but they've been found out in the tournament because they usually don't have that superstar that can carry you through when you come up against a team as good as them. And this year, I think things just fell right for them. I think the teams that could have knocked them out in that region, because they had stars that could have elevated them past Kansas, they got knocked out. And so I think it just fell right for them. And of course, they had to survive, mortal danger against Creighton. Creighton had the ball down one in the last minute with a chance to take the lead and messed it up and ended up losing. So I'm going to go with Villanova here because I just think that Villanova has some stars like Colin Gillespie if he's healthy, that when it comes right down to it, he's somebody that can get the bucket they need to get when they absolutely have to have it. And he can carry them through. Samuels can carry them through. And I just think Villanova has got some of those stars that Kansas might not be able to deal with. I also think they get the pace down. And it's their kind of game, so it's in the 50s and 60s and not in the 70s and 80s, which is what Kansas would prefer. So that is the first semifinal done, and let me put all my cards on the table here. I will be cheering for whoever wins that game against the next two teams that I'm about to talk about, because I can't stand either of the next two teams I'm about to talk about, and my God, it's finally happened.
There can be only one.
Duke versus Carolina in a tournament for the first time. And it's Mike Krzyzewski's final season. And it's Hubert Davis's first season.
You gotta pass the torch.
What a fascinating contrast that is between the two of them. You've got a situation where on exposed form, you'd have to say Carolina. Carolina has been dominant in this tournament for the most part. Destroyed Marquette in round one. Had Baylor totally defeated, and then the refereeing nonsense and Brady Manick's ridiculous ejection from that game. And frankly, North Carolina kind of throwing up all over themselves a little bit as well. Allowed Baylor to stage a remarkable comeback. But you have to admire the character of the Tar Heels. I don't like saying that because I don't like saying anything nice about them. But to blow a 25-point lead, go to overtime, then win the overtime conclusively like they did was very, very impressive. And to do it with a lot of Baylor fans in the arena because it was in Fort Worth, Texas, pretty darn remarkable. Now, UCLA took it right up to him, and that was a one-point game right down to the last minute. North Carolina found a way to win that, and then you look at that regional final with St. Peter's. They just jumped St. Peter's at the start. It was 25-8, and the Peacocks were never in the game. That's what you're supposed to do to a 15 seed. They did it. And on exposed form in the tournament, they've been the better team. Because you look at Duke's run, weren't very impressive against Cal State Fullerton. Were in real danger against Michigan State, down 6 at the last media timeout and wriggled off the hook. Same thing, were in danger against Texas Tech, down in the last 4 or 5 minutes of that game, wriggled off the hook. And even Arkansas made a pretty big run at them before Duke stormed home in that game at the end to win. So on that basis, you'd have to say North Carolina. Then you go to the 2 regular season games and you could not have bigger contrasts. The first meeting, February 5th at Chapel Hill, Duke absolutely dominated this game from minute 1.
I can't believe what I'm hearing.
Well, then you better turn up your hearing aid, Pops.
Jumped out to a 13-2 lead. Got the lead up as high as 23 in the first half, and quite literally the only time North Carolina was close, or got any kind of close, was a little run right at the end of the first half, got it down to 11, and that's as close as they pretty much got after that start, was that 11-point deficit at halftime. Duke got it right back up the lead, and quite frankly, 87-67, Duke flattered Carolina. Duke could have easily won this game by 30 points if they wanted to. Thoroughly and utterly dominant. They shot almost 58% from the field, almost 50% from 3. And were just never in any, and there was never one moment you thought North Carolina even had a chance, never mind chance to win. So against that backdrop, and remember, North Carolina's a bubble team at this point when they played them in early February. You come to the game on March 5th. Mike Krzyzewski's final game at home at Cameron Indoor Stadium. Unbelievable amounts of pressure. There was still some notion that Duke could maybe get a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They're going for a regular season championship. And you got all the celebrities there because it's Mike Krzyzewski's final home game. And North Carolina at this point, with a terrible loss to Pittsburgh that they suffered early, right after, not long after the Duke game, North Carolina's squarely on the bubble. If they don't win this game, they go to the ACC tournament, maybe on the right side of the bubble, but barely. They would have been squarely right in it with a chance to miss the tournament. So North Carolina, with all of that, trails at halftime, and only trails by 2, even though Duke shot almost 60% in the first half. And they hang in there, and they absolutely dominate Duke the final 10 minutes of that game, and dominate him in the and the numbers they put up in the second half. They shoot almost 60% from the field, 4 out of 7 from 3, 13 of 16 from the foul line, and that's how North Carolina went into Cameron Indoor with all that pressure, with all that media there, with everything that was happening. They went in there and absolutely dominated. Absolutely crushed Duke in the final 10 minutes of the game. It was an amazing performance. And it took North Carolina from on the bubble with a chance to maybe miss all the way into safety and eventually an 8th seed. And one thing about North Carolina, since that Pittsburgh game, their only loss was to Virginia Tech in the ACC tournament. By the way, Virginia Tech also beat Duke the next night to win the ACC tournament. So there's a lot of different things here. The best argument you can make for Duke is, well, they dominated the first game and they led most of the first 30 minutes of the second game. And that's your argument for Duke. And they're the 2 seed, North Carolina's the 8. That's not an accident. But North Carolina, again, that last 10 minutes, if you saw it, if you saw it and didn't know the context, you'd have been convinced that they were the team going for the number 1 seed and Duke was the team that was on the bubble. And again, you look at the way they've played in this tournament, it's been dominant from North Carolina. And they boast so many guys that can score a lot of points. And, in that game at Duke, 4 different guys going over 20. That's pretty fantastic. And, this is just such a difficult game to pick. Because I'm absolutely convinced by what North Carolina's done in the tournament. And I can't stand the Tar Heels, but you can't look at their performance. I mean, you can count it against them. They blew the lead against Baylor, but I will continue to say that if the referees had a clue in that game, they would have cruised home. And then you're only looking at the UCLA game as the only time they were in any sort of trouble. And of course, UCLA was in the Final Four last year, so that's a pretty good, darn good team. So, having said all that, I've got to make a pick against two teams I can't stand. And I'm cheering against whoever wins this game. And I'm going to take Duke. And I don't like it because the thought of 2 more days of Coach K tail kissing and hagiography makes me ill. And the thought of Duke winning a national title with a team that's not nearly as good as a lot of the teams they've had that didn't win it. And certainly not nearly as good as any of the teams he's had that's won it. The thought of them winning a national title makes me ill in his last year. I mean, I can't think of a worse outcome for me personally as a basketball fan in this season than that. I don't even, it's just too horrifying to think about. But I just got a sneaking suspicion that they'll find a way through because it is, Coach K's final season and the doggone NCAA really wants it and whatever. I don't know. I know this much. Because of the fact that I'm so dead set against the winner of the second semifinal, I'm picking Villanova to win the final. And that's not based on anything other than I just can't stand the thought of Duke winning it. And if North Carolina gets through, then you've got Hubert Davis, first-year coach, trying to win a national title. Now, you take away the Steve Fisher example with Michigan because, again, that was a screwy circumstance where he takes over the team before the tournament and then they win the tournament. First-year coaches don't win national championships in basketball. It just doesn't happen. And that's the nature of it. It's very hard to go through that tournament. And you look at some of the other first-time coaches that had really good teams, like Tommy Lloyd in Arizona, did an amazing job with Arizona, and then they ran aground against Arkansas in the Sweet 16, and they probably should have been knocked out in round 2. It's so difficult because it's all those experiences. It's managing timeouts. It's moving the chess pieces around right. It's making the key adjustments. It's a hard, even if you're a greatly experienced assistant, that's a hard thing to get right. After 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 years as a coach, never mind in your first year. So that's what we're dealing with here. So I'm taking Villanova to win the Final Four. And God help us, please don't let Duke or North Carolina win it. But it's going to be a hell of a game, and that's the main course. Villanova, Kansas is the appetizer. Duke, Carolina is the main course. And, somebody said it to me, and I think it is true. The final, particularly if Duke, Carolina ends up a classic, the final will feel anticlimactic after that. And I don't blame anybody for feeling that way.
You ain't coming down from this.
But there is going to be one Monday night, and I will be looking forward to that. So that's it for Rodent Sports. Like, subscribe, share it around. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time.
That's it. We're done, right?